negative thoughts in your mind that you aren't good enough, that you'll never be successful? If so, you're not alone. I've had those thoughts playing in my mind ever since I took the leap to become an entrepreneur. It's a dirty, dark secret that no one likes to talk about, as the glamorization of becoming an entrepreneur is shown in the media. I realized that in order to succeed, I needed help. We all do. So I decided to go all in on myself, spending thousands of hours in the trenches, reading, joining groups, listening to podcasts, hiring coaches to develop a bulletproof morning routine for success. Join me on my journey as together we build our morning fire to ignite our lives as entrepreneurs. My name is Jeff Wickersham, and this is the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. Welcome to the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. I am extremely excited to have special guest John Espey on the show. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So I always love getting in the state, getting some energy. I know we're going to have just a great conversation today. So we're going to do 3 power breaths. And I define a power breath, breathing in through the belly, up through the chest. And as we do, we're going to raise our hands up to get some breaths in. All right. So let's go ahead and breathe in and out. Good. Another breath in and out. Final breath in and out. All right, now I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. We're going to yell boom at the top of our lungs, pound our chest, get the energy level amped up in 3, 2, 1, and boom!
Boom!
There you go. Love it, John. Love it. Thank you for playing along. So, morning routines, habits, rituals. I eat, sleep, and breathe them. I think they're so critical to just establishing that foundation for success. So, John, can you describe to the audience a little bit what a productive morning looks like for you, as well as 1, 2, even 3 things that you must do each day that creates that path towards success?
Sure. Well, I love coffee, but prior to getting coffee, I try to do a few things. Number 1 is drink, is just hydrate, drink water. I put a little bit of salt, a little bit of sea salt in it, squeeze a lime or a lemon in it, and down that to begin with. If it's dark and dreary out, I'll put in my human charger headset to get a little bit of light. But I much prefer to go outside in my bare feet, walk the dogs, and get some sunlight in. And that's always a good start for a day. I also typically don't eat breakfast during the week. I like to do intermittent fasting. I think that helps my focus a lot when I'm not focusing on digesting food for the first few hours of the day.
Nice. And I'm a huge fan of drinking that glass of water right when you wake up, right? Because the longest part of the day that we go without water is as we sleep. So the human charger, explain that a little bit to the audience. I know what it is. I haven't used it yet, but I'd love to hear, 1, you explain what it is for the audiences, and then 2, how long you've been using it and what the benefits are that you've seen from using it.
Sure. So the human charger was developed by a group out of one of the Nordic countries, maybe Finland or Norway. And there's times of the year when they have 20, 22, even 24 hours of darkness because they're so far north. And so they have a lot of what's called seasonal affective disorder, which I believe even affects people in North America, in the northern United States and Canada, when you don't get enough light. Your circadian rhythm relies on, hey, when I wake up in the morning and I get this light, it tells me to start producing cortisol and to start destroying melatonin. And honestly, if that is off, it has all sorts of effects. It can screw your sleep up, but it also just really affects your mood, independent of the lack of sleep. It can really affect your mood because these hormones that are triggered by the light being around you are very important to your overall happiness. And so I've been using the human charger I used the original model, probably found it 3 years ago, and it was just a real simple box that you buy. It looked like an iPad mini, or iPad Shuffle, the original one, but it didn't play music. All it did was it had headphones that were attached to the device, and then it shines light into your ear. And you use it for, I want to say 5 minutes, 6 minutes a day in the morning. And honestly, for me, I originally got it more because it's very effective when you're traveling east to west across time zones. It's very good at resetting your circadian clock so that you avoid jet lag. They since released finally a new set that's wireless. It plays music. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. But it's one of those things where I'd rather get natural sunlight. I'd rather stay in my own time zone. But if I can't have that, then it's a very good substitute. There's numerous studies that show that that shining the light into your ears is just as effective as light hitting your eyeballs in terms of triggering the hormone releases that the light does. And I believe that whatever the FDA is for the European Union has actually approved it for use in treating seasonal affective disorder. So there's some very real science behind it.
And I love that. One, you found that probably through self-discovery, right? And understanding, hey, and I feel it. Yesterday, it was raining here in the Northeast. It was a dark and dreary day. Today, it's beautiful and 75 degrees. And I just feel so much more energy. And it's amazing how powerful sunlight can be to the equation. So if you're listening, watching, that human charger, you might want to check that out, especially if you're in a place that you get more rainy days than you get sunny days, because that is a real thing. And I've felt it in my mood when it's dark and dreary out. That's when you've got to muster that courage. You've got to get that energy up, and it can be a grind. So it's a nice little biohack to use that to leverage it moving forward. So love those pieces to your morning routine. You've founded 6 companies. You've been an early stage investor in over 12. You've had 2 exits. So you've had a vast experience in the entrepreneurial and investing game. I'd love to hear a little background on how you got in there. And then let's touch on, I know we were talking beforehand, just some of the failures or lessons learned from those failures, because I think so much is gleaned from those painful pieces to the process that we all have to go through. But so many times we see, founded 6 companies, 12 early stage investors, 2 exits, and we think it's all roses, and we know it's not. So we'd love to hear a little bit, John, about your background, and then some of those lessons learned and maybe some of the failures that you've experienced.
Sure, absolutely. So my entrepreneurial background, I have wonderful, wonderful parents. I couldn't ask for better parents. It did not come from them. My dad worked for the same company his entire career and had a wonderful career, but he worked for a utility company. I was very fortunate throughout high school. I worked in a mom and pop restaurant and got to know the owners very well. And then in college, I got a job at a stereo shop, again, working alongside the owner. And what I saw was that these were normal people. They were just people who weren't afraid to fail, and they weren't afraid to make their own decisions, and they weren't afraid to be accountable for those decisions. And I wasn't ready to do that myself, but I always had in the back of my mind, at some point, I'm going to find something that I love, and I'm going to go do that myself. Because again, they were exceptional humans in many ways, but they really aren't that different from you or I. And so that's where it started. I went and finished college, took a job right out of undergrad. I went to George Mason University up in Northern Virginia, and I took a job at a consulting business that at the time they hired me. It was 200 people. By the time I started 6 months later, they had been acquired in a $1 billion transaction. It was a privately held company, so a lot of wealth was created. A lot of young people who I was working for were suddenly millionaires, and I got to work on a lot of early .com success stories and later .com explosions, and saw a lot of carnage as well. But that was very formative for me, because again, it kind of reawakened in me that, hey, you can create this kind of a company. That was an IT consulting business, and I ended up about 3 years later deciding to go join a startup that had 8 people at the time. And I came and joined as the 9th person. I was making probably 20% less money than what I was making at the last spot. Even though I was 9th person, I was still the new guy. And so I was starting from the bottom and giving up all the capital. But I could see that this earlier stage company was moving in the right direction, and the company that I was with was moving in the wrong direction. And it turned out to be far and away the best decision of my life. I learned so much through that experience. We grew that business to 135 people. I became the COO. I moved from Northern Virginia to Charlotte to open a new office, so I got to experience the entrepreneurship of going out and opening an office. And ultimately in 2008, we sold that business to Red Hat. And then I got to spend a couple of years running Red Hat's middleware consulting and just really growing my network and meeting a whole lot of people in the software industry. And at some point I decided to go off and help a couple of friends start a business that wasn't in consulting, but I was able to help they needed to raise some money. They had called me to come help them start the company. I said, well, I'm finishing this earnout with Red Hat, but I'd love to help you find some investors. And I ended up bringing in a couple people that I had met through the Red Hat journey, and we ended up funding it. And they let me participate in it in a very small way, big for me at the time, but small compared to what they were putting into it. And as luck would have it, I was at Duke University getting an MBA at the time, and one of my classes was VC and private equity. And I was learning a lot of technical deal structure, and I had access to a great template of term sheets and LOIs and everything else. And I could literally, like, as I was studying this stuff, I was putting together the deal terms for this group that I was investing in. And I think that's when, for me, the entrepreneurial thing came full circle. And I just said, look, I'm never working for somebody again. I admire people who can work for somebody, but for me, the thrill of going out and controlling my own destiny, and it's up to me to build the right team, or me to surround myself with people who can build the team. That was just, I just got bitten by that through the experience with Amentra and Red Hat, but very much so with that next company, which is called NextGrid. And then from there, I stepped out of the day-to-day. Still a shareholder, still an advisor to the company. I talk to the CEO every few weeks still. But the utility industry really wasn't where I wanted to be longer term, even though my dad had a career. I think I knew the abyss that I was staring into. In many ways, as an entrepreneur, they just move at a different pace than we like to. And so at that point, I built an app, a mobile app. It sucked. It was terrible. But I got people to use it. Anybody that knew me had to either contribute to my Indiegogo campaign or download the app or listen to me talk all day long about how great this app was going to be. And I ended up building a second version with a partner. I built the first and second version with a partner, by the way. And it got better, but it still was terrible. And then we hired a 21-year-old kid at UNC Charlotte to redesign it. And he just taught us everything we needed to know about how you build apps, how you design them, how you market them, how you position them within Apple, how you get the blogs to follow. Unfortunately, he couldn't teach us how to make money, and this was one of the bigger failures of my career, because we got all of these accolades. It was featured by Apple as the #1 finance app for a few weeks, which was just a super cool thing to see. But at the end of the day, we couldn't make a dollar with it, and we decided to start another consulting business to kind of fund the development of that product. And that consulting business was called Level with 2 V's. It became a success almost overnight. We were just taking the things we learned in building the app and applying that and helping big companies to adopt these techniques and these technologies. And I'd like to say that what we did was smart. I think it's more lucky that we had, my partner and I in that business both had experience selling to and working for. He had experience working for big companies. I had experience selling to big companies and building software for big companies. And these companies were just starting to look at things like, how do we do public cloud? How do we do DevOps? How do we do mobile? How do we do product design? How do we do agile? And we had all the answers because we had just done this in a small startup, but we could also speak their language about compliance, HIPAA, PCI, you name SOC 2, whatever it might be. And it took off. And within 5 years, we had a 250 person company, probably about 50 million a year in revenue. And we sold that business this past April to a publicly traded British company. But it was interesting to just see the progression, because without Amentra, I never could have done Level. Without NextGrid, I probably couldn't have done Level. And certainly without Reward Summit, the failed app business, we could have never, we could have built Level, but it wouldn't have been the same if we didn't bring all of those modern practices under the same roof.
Gotcha. So one of the things that stuck out to me was throughout, even when you were working for some mom and pop shops, it just gave you this visibility into what was possible, right? And that, yes, they're amazing human beings, but they put their socks on one sock at a time, right? They're the same people. So, and I feel like belief is such a powerful piece to the equation that until you see something happen with your own eyes, many times the mind will create barriers, create obstacles, and say it can't be possible, right? The 4 minute mile is always the greatest example, where once that was broken, the next like 5 years, it was broken 27 times or something, right? And
Yeah.
it's crazy how that happens. So I would say one of the takeaways, just hearing your story, is being around certain individuals, whether it was business owners or working with some .com companies, and seeing it being possible. So that opened your eyes to, hey, why can't I do this when the time came? Would that be accurate?
It's very accurate, and there's no way. I think there are some humans who don't need to see it done, and they can just do it. And I'm always envious when I meet them, because usually they're 15 years younger than I am. But for me, I wasn't one of those. I had, and I think for most people, it's true. If you can see somebody else do it, it's a whole lot easier to do it. And I think that's true of anything that you're doing. If you're practicing yoga, be around people who are great at yoga, and see that they are just humans who work a lot harder at it than you do, and have a different mindset. Or if it's like going to the CrossFit gym and trying to do a muscle up or a double under, be around people who can do it. And because it's just so much easier than trying to go figure it out on your own. If you're somebody like me who, I knew I wanted to do it, but I just wasn't going to push myself over that edge without the right mentors and role models.
Yeah, and I think the other point to that is, when you see somebody else do it, you can ask questions, right? And so many people are willing to share, hey, this is how I did it, or this is the technique I used for a double under, whatever it might be. So if you're struggling, if you want to get to a certain place, surround yourself with those people that do it on a consistent basis, or can show you the way, can be a mentor. And that just seems like a common theme throughout your journey, is having great mentors, being around it and seeing it, and then creating that belief internally for yourself to continue to move forward.
No, you're making a great point. And I always tell people, like, I owe a debt of gratitude to my mentors, and they would punch me in the face if I didn't pay it forward to the next generation, because they did that for me, and somebody did it for them before. And that's how I got into angel investing. I'd been approached by a few different people through the years who had worked for me in different capacities, and they were looked to me as a mentor. And then when they start their business, a lot of them would ask for money before they had made any progress. And I told them, well, it doesn't really work that way. Let's get some progress, and let me help you figure out how to get progress. And then we'll talk about an investment. But I think that's what led me into investing, was a lot of the mentorship that I started doing, and the advisory work that I was doing formally and informally. It was just a natural thing to then go and invest in those businesses.
Yeah, and the other common theme I think I've heard throughout your journey and your story, not only as you were growing and you were going through your corporate career, and then stepping out onto your own and now mentoring others, is relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Relationships being so key in the process, and surrounding yourself people that like, and trust, and continuing to make those connections. And I feel like that's a lost art today, that there is. Yes, we have social media, we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, we have these things that connect us, yet we're not as connected as we used to be, because we don't have face-to-face conversations or these, this interview we're having today. So that just seems like a common theme throughout your experience as well. And I'm a huge fan of that, of developing relationships. How can I help you? And then in the future, there might be help in the other way.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And the number one piece of advice that I give young people always, and it was given to me by one of my mentors that we haven't even talked about, but it was don't worry about making don't job hop to make an extra $5,000 a year. That's just penny wise and pound foolish. Don't even worry about how much money you're making, really. I mean, you need to make a living and cover your basic needs. Ideally, you should be comfortable and that sort of thing. And there's nothing wrong with making more money, but it isn't what's going to get you where you really want to go. And where you really want to go is where, and it's whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a corporate type. Where you really want to be is where you control your destiny. You can do great things and be around great people. And the two most important things to make that happen, to me, are your skills and your network. And I think the network is even more important than the skills. But I always looked at throughout my career, am I building my skills? Am I building my network? If I'm doing both, then as long as I'm comfortable financially, then I feel good about where I'm going.
Gotcha. No, I love those two. Building your skills and building your network. That's awesome stuff. So I know you had a little bit of a shift in your 30s diet wise, right? And obviously, to be able to achieve amazing, extraordinary things, you need to be physically fit. You need to put good fuel into your body. So describe that a little bit to me.
Sure. So I've always been maybe what you'd call a gym rat. I played football and lacrosse in high school and had another great mentor who was the strength coach at NC State, who had played high school football. And he came and taught me a lot about the gym, and it just captured my imagination. And so my whole life, I've always been into the gym. I think the modalities that I use have changed pretty dramatically, and my philosophies have changed. But I was very lucky at an early age to just have it drilled into my head that the gym is a good thing. But even in spite of that, I ran a marathon in my early 30s, and that was the first time I ever gained weight, was after the marathon, because I weighed 215 when I ran the marathon, which is a little heavy, if I'm being honest, for running that kind of distance. And I was just so run down that I couldn't work out for 3 or 4 weeks, but I kept eating as if I were training 40 miles a week. And so I gained a lot of weight at that point, and I got it under control using the South Beach diet. But I really quickly gained it back. And in the process of gaining it back, I was starting to feel lethargic. I was losing, I would be winded going up 2 flights of stairs. And one day I was winded because I was running up to grab my old jeans that were 4 sizes bigger, because the jeans I was wearing weren't fitting anymore. And I said, what am I doing? The answer isn't to go grab my old jeans. The answer is I've got to figure out how to fix this. And somebody recommended to me, I started the South Beach diet because it had worked for me before. And my friend was like, why are you doing South Beach? Why not just go full paleo? And I'd never heard of paleo. So I started researching it, and I was like, wow, it's not that different, but there's no such thing as phases. It's not even really a diet. It's just how you eat. And so I tried it, and for a month I felt like crap. Had the typical, what I now know to be the keto flu, because it was, paleo isn't necessarily ketogenic, but I was low carb, and I suspect I was feeling the keto flu. But all of a sudden I broke through, and my focus, my sleep, my mood, I was literally getting younger every month. I felt, I could feel myself going backwards in time, to the point where I lost 55 pounds over 6 months. And the workouts I had been doing, which were at home P90X and Insanity workouts, just weren't cutting it anymore. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine said, why don't you come try CrossFit? And the mental challenge and just what I felt, I could, every single workout, I thought I was never going to finish it. And I just loved that, the challenge, the mental, can I really do this workout? And so I started building up, the ability to do these CrossFit workouts. And then I started experimenting with sauna and ice bath and human charger, as we talked about. I'm a geek like you. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and when I hear anything, my latest thing is I bought these Katsu bands. You wrap them around your arms and your legs to restrict venous blood flow and to keep it into your muscles for longer. And now I'm doing that once a week. So I put it all back to that paleo diet. It really, what you put into your mouth and into your stomach is really what you become. And I don't think paleo is the end all be all diet for anybody. I think everybody has a slight variation on their diet that's going to be right for them. But I think if you can find what works for you, that's the first key for me to gain health.
Yeah, and I think it's the foundation, right? Everybody wants to build these businesses, wants to run fast, but you don't have your physical fitness. If you're not putting good fuel into the engine that is your body, then you're always going to be, to your point, running up the steps, winded running up the steps. How are you going to do amazing things in your business, in your career, if you don't have that foundation and the physical activity? I love pushing the limits because it unlocks things mentally that typically won't happen unless you're exerting yourself physically. So it's such a critical piece to the game. So I love that. So John, where can people find you if they want to follow you, find out more about what you're up to?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, John Espey. And if somebody wants to connect with me, just let me know why, give me a little context, and I'm more than happy to connect, or you can feel free to follow me. JSB620 on Instagram. I have a podcast called the Defiance Ventures podcast. We are rebranding it in the next couple of months, but if you look for Defiance Ventures or John Espey, you should be able to find me on the podcast. If you go to defianceventures.com, which is my current company that does venture investments as well as acquisitions and turnarounds, defianceventures.com or defiance.ai for short, you'll be able to find the podcast there. I try to do 1 or 2 podcasts a week where I interview founders of companies, and I'm hoping I can get you to join soon because I'd love to talk to you about how you got into this here.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, John. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me so much, Jeff. And thank you for the breathing. I needed it.
There you go. There you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have an amazing rest of your day. Rise, fight, love, repeat. Get after it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. You now have the knowledge, but without action, knowledge is useless. Choose to act. Choose to step into your greatness and unlock that hero inside of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review so more entrepreneurs can hear this message. If you absolutely love this podcast, which I hope you do, then share it up with someone you know who might see benefit from it. Become that beacon of change, and together we can impact the world.